Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to Olainfarm fourth quarter webinar. Recently, Olainfarm has announced its unaudited financial results of 2013, which showed that the company has reached a new sales record of 78 million euros. Forward, Salis Lapinch, the member of Olainfarm Management Board, will inform you in detail about what the year 2013 brought to the company and what they are expecting in the future. But before Salvis begins with his presentation, a quick reminder for those who have joined us for the first time. Right after the presentation, we will open the floor for questions and answers session. Please use the chat pod on your right side of the screen to send in questions. We have also received questions via email that will be given preference. We will address the rest of the questions afterwards. Salvis, please, the floor is all yours with the presentation.
Thank you, Agata. I was about to say nice to see you all, but this time I probably should say nice to see the list of you all. Yeah, another year has ended, and it's been probably 13 or 14 webinars of ours, and I'm glad to see that we're still the only ones making them on a regular basis, and I'm also glad to see that although we do them at least for a year, we still see a lot of interest. The webinar has just started. It's only more than 30 people listening to us. So thank you for the interest. Yes, indeed, the year has ended. The financial results have just been unaudited ones have just been published. And so let me go briefly through them for you. So let's start with the fourth quarter alone. So if you look at the fourth quarter alone, we missed a new record a little bit. So we missed it by 3%. For those of you that are following our news on a regular basis, they know that last year, year 2012, the fourth quarter was exceptionally good for one single reason, that we had very sizable extra shipments to Ukraine, and I think in 2 months in a row in the last quarter of 2012, Ukraine was the biggest market for us, not Russia. And that was a performance that was very difficult to repeat or beat. But we nearly did it. So we made the sales for more than 17 million lats in last quarter of last year alone. And as I said, overshipment to Ukraine was really the only reason why this was the second best quarter in our corporate history. Pharmacies made the net sales of about 2.6 million lats, which is an increase by 28%, and a bit more than 500,000 lats were sold by Silvanos. If I look at the profit, according to unaudited figures, it's preliminarily at 2.7 million lats or 3.8 million euros, which is a reduction by 20%. And there are several reasons. First of all, they are shrinking compared to the last quarter of last year, but still it's the second best quarter in terms of profit in corporate history. It's again last quarter of 2012 is really difficult to beat for a number of reasons. Also, of course, we do have a bit higher costs here and there, and of course, as you know, the influence of retail business is increasing in our overall sales, and as you all know, retail business is, although a nice business to have and a stable one, but it is of course conducted with a bit smaller margins than what our normal pharmaceutical production business is. So if you look at fourth quarter alone in terms of countries, you see that share of Russia has been down to 35% compared to normal level of about 40. Ukraine was nicely catching up in this quarter. Belarus is down to 5%. Basically, that is a tricky country. They have hard currency deficits, and they were limiting all kinds of imports in December for the single reason that their accessibility of foreign currency was limited. So we had basically no sales to Ukraine in December at all. UK is back on list, so that's our monoacetyl glucose supplies. So they are in top 10 with 4% of total sales. And back also are Georgia and Lithuania that were not here in Q3. So other markets are only 5%, means that last quarter of last year was really a concentrated sales. Now, in the meantime, I see that it has put the poll question, and the first one is quite a traditional one. It's about which country are you from. In case your country is not mentioned on the list, could you please down in a chat box write down what country are you from? Because all the time we see somebody in the others. So I'm really curious about that. In this case, one person that has pointed that that person is from the other country. If he or she could write down, just curious how large the investor base is for us, or at least the base of those that are interested. Now, if you look at the products, then basically we see a bit similar picture. Nerobidin is still, of course, quite clearly leading the race. Norfen is also performed quite nicely and is growing. Para-aminosalicylic acid, which is the product we mainly supply to World Health Organization, is up to 5%, which is probably the biggest share I've ever had. And that means that our shipments to World Health Organization in Q4 of last year were bigger than usually. And MUG, which is basically the same thing, the thing we do sell to the United Kingdom, is here with the same 4% as UK is in the country list. So if you look at the full last year, indeed, Egita was totally right. We did set a new sales record. It's about 55 million lats or 78 million euros. Still, despite the fact that we had this Ukrainian overshipment, we did manage to set a new sales record for the entire year. Pharmacies made a gross sales of about 9.5 million lats or 13.5 million euros. Net sales, meaning cleared for consolidation, the sales were 6.6 million lats or a bit more than 9 million euros. Sylvanos, since acquisition, made a sales of almost 2 million euros, about 1.3 million lats, but of course, so far, with that size of Sylvanos sales, the impact on our consolidated figures is not that big. If you look at the profits, preliminarily, they are 8.9 million lats or 12.7 million euros, about 10% smaller than last year. As you know, in the early December, we made basically during the previous webinar, we came up with the profit target adjustment. So that profit target was outperformed by 0.8%, but if you look back at the original consolidated profit target, which was, if I remember correctly, 11.5 million lats, that was underperformed by 29%. Also here, among other factors, increase in share of increase of retail in our total sales, and also the same Ukrainian overshipment factor are the main contributors to the falling margins and therefore falling profits. In the meantime, I see that the next question has been put on. And basically, also quite traditional one is what do you think our results are for last year? Are they better than expected? Are they worse than expected? Or are they just as expected? As I currently see, most of the voters think that they are just as expected, which is probably good. That is probably, I take it as a compliment to how open we've been, so we do not have come up with any sort of surprises. Now, if you look where the growth, or in some cases decline, has been coming from, so we look at the 15 best-selling products and compare it in 2013 versus 2012, and we see indeed that all the key products, all the promotable products, including Nerobidin, Olainfarm, Adaptol, Furamag, Femcrol, Meldonium, they've been falling. The total reduction has been in these products by about 2 million lats. The reason for that basically is, again, the overshipment to Ukraine, because those sales were made in 2012 that normally should have been made in 2013. And also coming back to the margins issue, since promotable products are the ones that have the highest margins, that also, of course, influences the bottom line of our statements. The only ones increasing indeed are etitizine, which is a promotable but was still increasing. So good job by our marketers there. Para-aminosalicylic acid, which is, as I said, the World Health Organization product, and one of our chemical products has been increasing nicely. And the others, all the pile of others. So we might have some nice new names in this top 15 and maybe top 10 list. If you look at the countries, then we have picture becomes totally clear. That basically all the countries except Ukraine, UK, Lithuania, and all the other small ones are falling. All the others are growing, but you see the quite impressive falling in Ukraine, and all the other countries could hardly compensate for that. Big markets like Latvia, Belarus, and Russia are growing quite impressively despite the high base. Latvia is growing by 70%. Belarus, one of our big markets, was growing by 48%, and Russia, even with certain instability in that market, has been growing by 14%. I'd also like to point your attention to three countries where a few years ago we were not basically present at all, and those are Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Kyrgyzstan. Although the volumes, of course, are still negligible, they are one of the nicest growing countries. Turkmenistan has been growing by 219%, and pretty much that continues. With good pace, also our countries like Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan are also growing at a very nice pace. Among other big growers, it's Netherlands. Netherlands basically is the World Health Organization, because Netherlands is where their logistical warehouse is located. So we do ship all the WHO products to the Netherlands. Spain is one of the big consumers of our chemical products, so they're also up by more than 200%. So that's a short overview of how our financials are looking. Now let me focus a bit on the news that's been around about us for the last couple of months since I spoke to you in December. Basically, the major news really happened in January. In January, the Supreme Court of Latvia ruled that we are not allowed to use the trademark of Midolat, including its Cyrillic transcription. We did assure it instantly, and let me repeat again that since 2010, we are no longer producing anything under the trade name. And therefore, this verdict will have absolutely no impact whatsoever on any sale of any Olainfarm's product in the future. Also, at the very end of last year, we acquired three more pharmacies. Two of them are located in Riga. One of them is actually reasonably well known and famous. That's the one located in. Those of you who live in Riga, of course, certainly know the medical company called ARS. Located on one of the first private medical institutions, and that one is having its pharmacy, which we now acquired. Another one is also in a quite central location on Large Places Street in Riga, next to the new theater. And third one is in a smaller town called Priekule. That's pretty much closer to Liepāja. Also, among recent events, let me start with a bigger picture for you. As you know, and that's not a recent event, that event is almost 1 year old, but the government of Latvia agreed to provide a tax rebate for us if we do execute certain capex program. According to their approval, the maximum that they could provide a tax rebate for is about 35 million euros over the next remaining 4 years. If we do implement that program, about 7 million euros in tax rebate would be available to us. Also, as you've noticed, we have managed to grow quite dynamically over the last couple of years, and production capacities of some of the best selling products, especially talking about the volumes of chemical production, are nearly exhausted. and therefore much investment, some investment indeed, is needed and crucial for the growth. Therefore, the capex program for this year is worth about 20 million euros. That not only includes the capex program that we would implement according to governmental approval, but of course there are other needs as well. So similar amount will be needed for 2015. So these are two key years when we need to implement the capex program. This, of course, needs, since we do not have an extra 20 plus million euros, that we might need an extra borrowing in times that, as you probably noticed, are quite turbulent in our key markets. So, given previous considerations, the board of the company will propose to put a dividend payments on hold for the profits made in 2013 and 2014. The board will also propose to restart that from the profits made in 2015 with a payout ratio of 17.5%. Those of you who follow us probably remember that we started dividend payment with a payout ratio of 10 and kept increasing by 2.5% every year, and intended to raise it to 25% of the net profit and then make a further decision. We also never really came back with a firm and binding dividend policy, exactly for the reason that the markets, most of the markets where we operate are still shaky ones, and which we can quite clearly see now. So we never came up with a binding policy. It was really a dividend declaration. Then after when we restart the dividend payment, we will restart it at the rate of 17.5, and therefore our intention to gradually increase to 25% of profit, increasing it by 2.5 percentage points per annum, is still in place. Now, and I think we should be having a poll question at about this time. Now, as usually I do in webinars, after having the update on our financials and having updated you on our recent developments, we do take a specific topic and try to provide our comments or any insight that we can. And of course, given what's happening right now, what everybody seems to be talking about, we decided that this time we certainly have to look at the crisis we have in CIS. In the meantime, in respect to what I just presented about the dividends, I really do want to hear your opinion on this proposal that the board is going to come up with. Given all the conditions, do you think that this proposal is a smart and justified and sort of careful one? Or you think there's no reason to worry, we should just borrow more and keep paying dividends? Or you really do not care about whether or not we do pay dividends? So I'd be really, really grateful if you give your honest attitude to this. Now let's go on and look at what there is I wanted to tell you about the CIS. First of all, of course, even prior to all the heights of Russia-Ukraine crisis, there was a devaluation of Kazakhstan's national currency called the tenge. It has been devalued by 20%. In 2013, Kazakhstan was the fifth biggest market of ours. It made up a little less than 5% of our total sales. We have managed very nice growth in Kazakhstan, clearly above the market, clearly way above the market average over last years. And last year we increased our sales there by 17%. Prior to that by 10%. Prior to that by 30%. And prior to that, which was 2010, we increased our sales by 15%. Sales to Kazakhstan are made in euros, therefore that means that we do not have a direct currency risk, but of course the purchasing power of local population, especially for Kazakhstan market is falling. But then again, sort of a good news is that virtually all the pharmaceuticals available in Kazakhstan are made elsewhere, are imported. Therefore, we do not have, there's no one that would have a competitive edge on that market because of this. Um, so in many cases, when devaluations happen, we do split. Since we are getting paid in euros, somebody does have a currency exchange loss, and in most cases, those are local wholesalers and the ones that are importing products in euros and selling them in local currency. Uh, and so the same applies to Kazakhstan. Uh, and in many of those situations, we as an honest partner, as a partner that wants to uh, retain a long-term relationship with the company, we do split uh, the currency losses. And we have already agreed on that for this devaluation in Kazakhstan, and that means that directly this devaluation will cost Olainfarm a little less than 34,000 euros, though those will be written off to partially compensate our partners for the loss they make. Future outlook for the situation is reasonably good. It doesn't seem that there are major worries about Kazakhstan's economy for the nearest future, unless, of course, Russia-Ukraine crisis worsens the situation in the region so much that it starts influencing seriously Kazakhstan and the other countries. And of course, the major topic pretty much everywhere these days, and I've noticed that, of course, on our share price, is the Russia-Ukraine crisis. For those of you, and probably none of you, but still, if somebody hasn't really been quite, updated on what's really happening there, is that the relationship between the two countries started rapidly deteriorating when violent clashes started in Kiev. Shortly after that, Russia threatened military intervention, and quite immediately after that, the EU threatened to impose sanctions. No matter what the military situation, whether military development takes place, Ukrainian economy is suspected to be in a very poor shape anyway, and this crisis has caused currency fluctuation, which led to devaluation in both countries by about 10%. And as to me, there's still not a hint, not a clue about how long this crisis is going to last and when it's going to be resolved. So if you look at Russia, of course, that is the biggest, and we are looking at each country separately from our perspective. Russia is, of course, the biggest market for us. Its share in our sales fluctuating between 35 and 45%. Sales to Russia currently are made in Russian rubles. However, the base price for the product is set and agreed in euros, and then we separately, adjust, have the agree on the exchange rate and how many rubles per euro we want to get. Currently, since January the 1st, the exchange rate that has been applied was 50 rubles per euro. So until this very recent development, the exchange rate was sort of favorable to us. And currently the ruble euro is worth about 50 rubles, so we are basically on that level. But according to our agreement, we do reserve right to adjust the currency exchange rate that we apply if the actual exchange rate becomes very different from what we use. Sales to Russia have been growing quite nicely over the last years, despite the fact that the base has been high. In 2013, it's been by 14%, and the previous years have been 31%, 17%, and 23%, respectively, all very, very clearly above the markets. According to DSM Group, as of December 2013, Olainfarm is the 80th biggest seller of pharmaceutical products in Russia. Ukraine is, of course, the second biggest market of us. Its shares fluctuating in our sales around 20%. Sales to Ukraine are made in euros to the exclusive partner. And that exclusive partner then releases products only against a down payment. So this has allowed us to experience virtually no currency loss in Ukraine for many, many years. Uh, there are still, of course, significant accounts receivables for Ukraine, and for most part, they do derive from overshipment of made in 2012, though the client hasn't really caught up with all the obligations they have against us. Most of the remaining receivables will be factored shortly. Sales to Ukraine have been growing even more impressively. Of course, it's hard to compare 2013 to 2012 and 2012 to 2011 because of the overshipment factor I've been mentioning very many times today. But if you compare 2011 to 2012, sales grew by 132%. In 2010, they grew by 20%. Of course, this is way, way, way above the market. We can have a look at January, of course, 2014. And then we managed to achieve the situation in Ukraine, as you know, wasn't at that time necessarily very terribly stable. But even under those conditions, we managed to demonstrate an increase to the January of 2013, when we still were shipping stuff to Ukraine. And very preliminary data for February shows that our sales in Ukraine are, of course, falling, which is given the conditions, is absolutely what we expected. But they are in the area of 700,000 euros, which is about one half of what they should normally be. So that's pretty much our look at what we are going to expect there for next some month. So how do we look at this? Of course, as you know, both countries combined make up more than 50% of sales, and given the high entrance barriers in other countries, us remaining in those markets is a very crucial for us, at least in the medium term. We do, of course, do a lot of internal planning, a lot of we can call it in a way a contingency planning. And for those plans, our assumptions are that sales in Russia will not grow, and sales to Ukraine will fluctuate between 0.7 to 1 million euros a month for next several months. Why are we so optimistic for Russia? That's something that you might ask. Is we plan to achieve zero growth, although we are expanding our activity in very many countries, many cities, towns, and smaller towns in Russia. So our market penetration is going to be bigger. We still do not plan any growth. There's a lot of talk about economic sanctions, EU applying economic sanctions to Russia, Russia applying sanctions to EU. To my experience, and I've been quoted on this very many times, even Saddam Hussein's Iraq was allowed to import medicines. Even in the worst years of Cold War, there were American-made medicines in Russia. So normally, economic sanctions do not apply to medicines and other similar humanitarian products. Also, one of the possibilities that we do look at in our contingency planning is that if crisis persists, and we've seen this before, and I've told you about this. So we've seen this before, for instance, in Belarus. So they might see it also this time, maybe a bit in Kazakhstan. There are some of the more frightened companies, companies that are not as brave, so to speak, that are a bit more scared of CIS and all the developments than we are. Sometimes some of those companies decide to close their offices, leave the country, stop exporting, stop doing any promotional activity whatsoever. This as well might be happening here this time. So, whereas we most likely are going to stay in these countries no matter what for quite a long time. So if that happens, then that might allow us to increase the market share. And sooner or later, when the situation will certainly return to normal, that pretty much might play in our hands. So that's about it. Took about half an hour of your time. but I felt I should. I mean, this is pretty much everybody's topic today, so I think I should be focusing on this a little bit. So it is now a Q&A time. So Egita, could you start with that one, please?
Yes, Salvis, thank you very much for the presentation, and we proceed with the questions. And first questions comes from Sarmita Greenberg, and the question is, how will the events in Ukraine and Russia affect Olainfarm's future developments? Salvis already answered this question, I think, but maybe you have something to add.
No, I
Salvis.
mean, like I said, there are quite a few, to my understanding, quite a few possible development scenarios, and um, we think we are looking at different possible scenarios that might be happening there, and I think I've pretty much covered what we believe is the most likely one. So there's not much I could add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next question, when could we expect Olainfarm's share price to reach its previous level? Salvi?
Well, I guess most of participants there are from what is called an investor community. So I think you are the right people to answer this question. I mean, we of course are you know doing everything we can to provide the company to ensure the company grows and to ensure that it's financially sound and stable. But well, but maybe that's a good idea. Maybe there is a chat room. Maybe everybody could come, could write their speculations about when do they think the price will return to the record high, which was I believe 8.4 euros or so. So I see many up there typing. So that's really for the investors to answer. Egida?
Yes, and next question was about how big dividends you could pay, but that's already also answered. So I
Yeah,
think there is nothing to say, or maybe you can.
yeah, okay. I had a suspicion that this question might come up, and indeed we had a very tough discussions in the board and in the management. But since the news that were coming in become more and more worrying, and there are reasons to believe that bank lending might as well be, let's say, how to put it diplomatically, banks might be a bit more nervous towards the companies that have some of the CIS exposure. In this case, paying dividend would just put another risk to the company. We certainly, as soon as we all feel a bit more sure and secure about the situation in our markets, about the investments that we have to make, we absolutely certainly return to dividend payments. We simply just want to do not want to expose the company to extra risk for a dividend of what it could be, about less than 20 euro cents per share. So yeah, we don't want to probably nobody wants to have a bigger risk to the company, but just because of 20 euro cents per share or something. So that has been also pretty much our consideration. And yeah, we do hope for understanding in this respect. Again, as soon as situation returns to normal, as soon as we've completed most of our capex needs, we absolutely surely will restart the dividend payment program. Nikita?
Yes, thank you. And forward questions are sent in from Right Seglaitis. And first one is why in the last 2 years Olainfarm has experienced a substantial decrease in sales in Ukraine?
Yeah, again, this is, I must refer again to the overshipment, and probably Mr. Reglitis has not been a regular visitor of our webinars. I'll just take a minute and briefly explain it. that for a number of regulatory reasons, it was impossible for us to sell our products in Ukraine for the first half of 2013. But in order for us to remain in the market, we decided at the end of 2012 that we will overship our products to Ukraine so they are available to the local customers, which we did. So statistically, now it shows that we had a huge growth of about 99%, if I remember correctly, in 2012 compared to 2013. But since we didn't ship anything, virtually anything to Ukraine for about half of 2013, statistically again it shows 48% reduction in sales to Ukraine in 2013. Again, if you look at the previous years, we have been growing there nicely, and first indications of this year are that we will grow there again. But then again, because of the recent crisis, uh, that growth becomes a bit of, we're not that sure about the huge growth there. But I would not certainly agree that we are not growing in Ukraine. Gita?
Yes, and next question. Um, how are you planning to enter the Eastern markets? And will Olainfarm cooperate with local companies, or will you try to look for contacts yourself without attracting major partners?
It depends. In every single country we're going to, we are looking at the partners, or let's say further, we are looking at the best way of how to go in those markets, and in every single way, in every single case, we look for one type of partner or another. Sometimes we might go for exclusive distributor. Sometimes we might go for a full scale office ourselves, including the marketing, but only look for the logistical partners. Sometimes we could even be producing under somebody else's brand name, as we sometimes do that in Georgia and partially in Lithuania too. Depending on the country, depending on who are the key players in that country, there's no clear recipe. We do keep our minds open and do react on whatever we think is the most suitable for the particular market. Would that be Eastern market or Western market or any other geographical location? Get it?
Next question. How many patents does Olainfarm have, and what is their validity period?
Currently, we have 13 patents with very different validity periods. From about 4 years remaining was probably the shortest one, and then for different patents, there are different possibilities to prolong them, up to 18 years still remaining for very new ones. Of course, for a pharmaceutical company that wants to be something a little more than just a generics producer, we have to constantly invest in research and development as we are doing, and sometimes that results in nice patents. So we are no exception that time. So currently we have 13 active patents. Agita?
Yes, and next question. According to Olainfarm's balance sheet, the value of your patents lately has experienced significant changes. First decrease, then increase. Please explain why.
Well, decreasing. I mean, if you remember, at the end of 2012, we impaired some of the patents for optic isomers because the introduction of those products to the market, or as I call it, commercialization, was running a bit behind the schedule, a bit too much behind the schedule. So we decided to impair them for, if I remember correctly, about 1.1 million LATs. So that's one thing. Another thing, all the intangibles also include all the registration files and everything. Since we keep expanding in new markets, we keep investing into registration materials, into studies, and those are capitalized and those are also added. So it's in basically the sole reason for the big decrease was that we decided for reasons that we wanted to be conservative to impair our patents for 1.1 million lats at the end of 2012. Nikita?
And last question from those who were sent in previously. Could you please describe in more detail Olainfarm's future investment plans and forecast when the made investments could pay off?
Yes, I already mentioned a bit about that. So we do plan a capex of roughly a little below 40 million euros for next 2 years to come. Basically, there are following key places where we are going to invest. Um, the brand new production site for nitrofloranes. And for those of you that visited our factory recently, have probably seen the construction taking place next to our final dosage form site. As I said earlier in the presentation, there are some products that we are in chemical side, we are running at the maximum capacity, or close to maximum capacity. And I'm talking about synthesis of APIs for Nulofen and APIs for Adaptol. So those need some serious extension. Um, Also, for those of you that have been here and seen our final dosage form, even if you haven't been here, I can tell you that in pharmaceutical business, when you you finish production of one product and start production of the other product, not only you need to very thoroughly clean and wash your equipment, you also need to do the same with the walls and ceilings and floors and whatnot. That results in significant downtime once you shift from product to product. Now we have about 50 molecule names, so they are changing, of course, from one product to another, and we have about 40 different countries. And some of the batches of some of the products for some of the countries are really small, and therefore that downtime proportionally is getting even bigger and bigger. And for that reason, one of the investments that we're making is the production site of what we call a small batches. That will allow the more sophisticated, well, the more not sophisticated, it's all sophisticated, more productive equipment to be used for bigger batches with lesser downtime and less productive, therefore less expensive equipment will be used for smaller batches, for smaller countries. I mean, you see we have sales to countries like Moldova or Tajikistan or Azerbaijan, so on and so forth, Albania. Our batches are small, few thousand packages. The markets are growing. We certainly don't want to lose them. But by replacing, reorganizing production in this way, we of course could achieve a lot of efficiency increases. That's another place where you're going to make quite some investment, not a huge one. Also, smaller energy efficiency improvements. For instance, for chemical synthesis, among other things, you need a cooling station. Currently, we have a sort of centralized cooling, so the cold is delivered from one place throughout the factory, which results in loss of efficiency and also some energy loss. So we are going to improve that. The average payback period of the investments we planned is about 5.5 years. And if you add tax rebate to that, if you add EU funding to that, then it's actually below 5 years. Egita?
Thank you, Sally. And now we'll proceed with the questions which were sent in during presentation on this chat pod. So those who want, you are still welcome to write down your questions here. And we will start with the first one, and that's from Jamil, who wanted to know more about Olainfarm's presence in Vietnam.
Yeah, we do not have any presence in Vietnam. I believe we discussed this a few webinars ago. That I did admit, and I still do, that we have not been successful in entering Vietnam's market. We really spend significant amounts of money on maintaining a local office, and that turned out to be not probably the most efficient people that we hired. So we do not have any presence in Vietnam. We currently have a partner, yeah, can call it a partner, cooperation partner in Indonesia, responsible for the region. But since that failure in Vietnam, Vietnam itself is not really the top priority of ours. So we do not have any presence in Vietnam. Egida?
Next question is from Kristaps Berzinch, and he's asking, could you tell why inventories have increased that significant if the sales does not grow?
Inventories have increased basically because we have slightly adjusted the cost driver in our cost calculation. Instead of labor hours, these are now technological hours, and this might cause, has caused a bit of a disruption in cost calculation and therefore in inventory calculation. But this will certainly level itself out. There's nothing that hasn't anything changed in production. We don't have warehouses full of stuff. It's pretty much a long debate about what's the best way of calculating the cost in a lengthy and complicated production as we do have here. But these will the reason the thing is that probably not that comparable with last year, but this will level out with the next reports we give in. Nikita?
Thank you. And next question is from him, and he's asking, do I understand correctly? According to a consolidated financial report, Russia and Ukraine in total makes 50%. That is together with pharmacies, which have a slightly smaller profit level. However, accordingly to non-consolidated report, Russia and Ukraine constitute 70% in total.
Um, it depends on what unconsolidated report Mr. Pavlos is looking at. For instance, if he most likely is referring to the last unconsolidated report that is available, which is for the year 2013, for which he might be correct. But you should consider that there are, again, the significant overshipments to Ukraine. So, in unconsolidated terms, I guess it's of course higher than 55%, but I think it's below 70. I think in unconsolidated terms, it should be around 60, 62 or so. But again, it changes from year to year. Nikita?
Thank you. And Ivo is asking, last year you mentioned the possibility of decreasing the nominal value of Olainfarm shares tenfold to make it more attractive to the general public. Has there been any follow-up on this?
Yes, well, first of all, we caused a lot of, well, not a lot, but certain debate in public about this. I want to take this opportunity and thank all of you who did send your reaction to the proposal. And my summary of that was at that moment that generally there was a clear support to the share split, but not everybody agreed that this should be made tenfold. Now, at that time, Latvian law did not allow to have a share value smaller than 1 lat. But this has been, to my understanding, changed quite recently. So we might come back to this topic probably somewhere in autumn. Probably will be again asking you, given the share price at that moment. If you remember when we discussed this, it was still lat denominated share, and we had about 5 lats a share, which is about the same price as now. And yeah, so I would suggest that we do come back to this issue closer to autumn, and see whether there are any obstacles in the legislation, what the share price at the moment. Because one thing we certainly don't want to do, we want to make the shares more attractive to the general public, but do not want to make them into a penny stock either. So it's a bit of a balancing act here. But the issue has not been forgotten, and as soon as the situation stabilizes a bit, we will be back to this issue. Nikita?
Yes, and also Ivo is writing that yes, it has been changed, the law. So we're waiting for
Okay.
okay. Next question is from him again. Could you please explain why did you sell two pharmacies in October? How did that affect Olainfarm's profit?
Well, we could explain. It did affect Olainfarm's profit positively. We gained something like, I think, with less than 300,000 lats out of the deal. But that wasn't the reason we sold, not because we missed 300,000 lats. The the sort of normal practice among the pharmacy chains in Latvia, depending on what their strategic goals are, which areas they want to cover, which partnerships they want to establish, what they know about the growth of a particular area, to exchange the pharmacy licenses. So this wasn't really a sale. This was really we changed two existing licenses that we had to two licenses that somebody else had, because we had a different view of how particular pharmacies are going to perform, what's going to happen in particular region of Latvia, region of Riga in this case. So we did change to pharmaceutical licenses. You know, pharmacy licenses in Latvia are limited. So we did exchange two licenses that we owned to the two other licenses. So that was really the essence of the deal. Nikita?
Thank you. And Jamal is asking, how deeply connected are your roots with your subsidiaries and how their performance affects you?
Well, we really have, let's say, two important subsidiaries. The biggest one is Latvia's Apteekis, our pharmacy chain. And if our consolidated sales are slightly below um, 80 million euros, then the total contribution to that by pharmacies is a little more than 9 million euros. So it's about 12% is the impact of pharmacies in our overall sales. The other big subsidiary of the company really is Silvanos. Their current sales are about 3 million euros a year versus 78 millions of ours, so you can call it negligible. Um, the local offices in different countries, or representative offices, if that was what Mr. Jamil meant, um, they are basically really the different level. You can call them the structural units, the departments of the big company. All they do is provide different level of service in different countries. In some countries, it's just a regulatory representation that people simply maintain contact with local regulatory offices and sometimes maybe with some clients. In some countries, it's a pretty much a full-scale representative office with a significant marketing force and so on and so forth. We do not have any logistical daughter companies anywhere. So yeah, so those do not influence in any way. But the only one that leaves more or less serious influence really is Latvia's uptake as the pharmaceutical change, with about 12% influence on our sales. Nikita?
Thank you. And next question is from Thomas, and he's asking, what are your short-term plans regarding diversification in European Union countries?
Yeah, the bad news in pharmaceuticals really is that there could not be short-term plan, diversification plan. The good news is that since we know CIS markets, we've been operating in them pretty much since we've been created, um, and we know that some degree of instability will always remain there for a foreseeable future. So, and we have pretty much started the market diversification program. But again, because of the specifics of a business, it's taking quite a lot of time. I mean, just to give you a flavor, I mean, it's not totally diversification away from Russia. It's still a bit related economic zones. But Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, we started more or less serious operations there in like 2010, 2011. Now it's 2013, just finished, and we only start to see some first results coming out of this market. Um, if we are a bit more successful and aggressive with Silinos, and Silinos, as you know, mainly produces food supplements, not the medicines, and the registration, promotion of those is therefore a bit, from a regulatory point of view, is a bit more easy. Then we can talk about some shorter term strategy. But unfortunately, this business is very toughly regulated, and there are no quick no, there is no possibility to quickly jump from Ukraine to Brazil and Brazil to India and from India to Spain or so on. Egita?
Yes, and Edwin Srepa is asking a second next question, and that is, what are near future plans for investments? If it's not a secret, of course.
Well, I think I pretty much explained what our near plans of investments are. Besides that, I mean, one of the diversification also actually issues that's pretty much the question that Thomas asked. Uh, Once the situation gets a bit more stable in our key markets, one of the investment, wouldn't call it really a plan. I would more call it a serious consideration. Would be an acquisition of a pharmaceutical company that is located and doing its business outside the CIS area. I'd say, if I'm allowed to dream out loud, that would be a small size producer of pharma-related products located in Germany, for instance, having its sales mainly in Germany and other European countries and maybe Middle East, etc., etc. But that's really not a near future plan. That's more a further future consideration. But all the others I've already, I think, explained pretty much. All the nitrofuran production sites and Ulf and Adaptol chemical sites and small batch factory, things like that. Thank you there.
Thank you. And Jamil is asking, how does Olainfarm in general, besides patents, protects itself from intellectual property point of view? Meaning, how do you keep the talent in the company and not let competitors get ahead of you?
Well, first of all, that relates, of course, I think, to the chemists we have in house here, and indeed we have we believe we have a quite decent remuneration system. We have quite tough labor agreements. We have also certain security measures to make sure that information is not flowing around that freely. Of course, you can never be sure what person says and does outside the work, but we've done pretty much typical precautions. One thing that we do in terms of sales, besides patents, is protection of trademarks. since we do a lot of marketing effort. And in that marketing, it's a trademark of the product that's being put a lot of stress on. We have, besides the patents on molecules, combinations, technologies, etc., we have, of course, registered trademarks on us. Once you promote product under the given trademark, it's certainly not that easy for anyone else to take over the market. You get that?
And next question is from Dinis Gex, and he's asking, what is your long-term vision for Olainfarm, like 20 years and more?
Yeah, my long-term vision, or our long-term vision of Olainfarm for about next 20 years is that it is the biggest pharma company in the region. It does have, I just told, uh, some related company factory, probably in at least one other part of the world. I named Western Europe, but it could as well be Middle East. It could as well be Southeast Asia. It could be either Latin America or North America. Um, I see this company being public. I see this company, and that's again pretty much a question not to Olainfarm, probably more to how the Latvian or Baltic stock markets will develop. Could be listed either in Riga or probably in some if Riga market doesn't deliver in terms of liquidity, it could as well be listed either Stockholm or AIM, for instance. It would have, yeah, therefore the sales, currently we are doing sales in about 40 countries. I see that in 20 years the number of countries we do regular sales to is at least 60. I see this is one of the most valuable Latvian-based companies. Um, I see this company mainly focusing on niche products. Maybe in 20 years we are talking about the very first real original molecule developed here. So these are my fantasies. I could go into details. Of course, I mean dividend payout ratio is increased to 40 by that time. Agita?
Thank you. And Jonas Jost is asking, from long term to short term, can we expect publishing of the preliminary sales of February this Friday?
That's a very short term. That is a very short term. Now let me look at the calendar for a second and see what date it is. So this Friday, most likely no, most likely no. But and again, it's a pretty much it's. Let me tell you. I mean, most likely it's going to be available this Friday. But and even if it is published on Friday, it will be published after the end of the trading session, because like we do publish our quarterly reports on the very last day, although sometimes they are available quite a few days in advance, is because we do think that consistency is a value, and once we do not want to provide any extra benefits to the investor who is constantly checking our website or stock exchange's website versus the investor who is not doing that frequently. So most likely, if it will be published on Friday, it will be published after 4 o'clock. Nikita?
Thank you. As I see, we are almost running out of time, so please write down last questions and so we can answer. And now there is question from Jamel. Back in 2012 in the Netherlands, you experienced an increase of 350% in sales. The reason behind it being tuberculosis problem, was it made in coalescence with the government? Could the same pattern occur in other countries as well?
Yeah, the trick about the Dutch sales is that it has absolutely nothing to do with Netherlands, in fact. Like I said, we are one of the very few, if not the only, Eastern European producer qualified supplier for the WHO, the World Health Organization. In this particular case, we do produce some of the anti-tuberculosis products that are approved or pharmaceutical what we call registered with WHO, which means that for anti-tuberculosis programs where WHO is involved around the world, and those mostly, of course, are third world countries, they are only buying these products from the qualified producers, which we are. Now, how the Netherlands are coming into picture is that in Netherlands there is the main sort of logistical center, logistical warehouse for the medicines distributed by the WHO. So what we do is once we produce them, we ship them to their logistics warehouse in the Netherlands. So technically, they appear as our sales to the Netherlands. Which parts of the world these packages end up in, we have not the slightest idea. So we do report Netherlands because that's where we ship them to. But the Dutch government is in, I don't think is in any way directly involved in this. Agita?
So it seems that is it from the questions. Thank you very much for the presentation and for the questions and answers. And so please follow up Olainfarm announcements on Nasdaq OMX Baltic webpage, and there you will also find the recording of this webinar.
Good. Thanks everyone for joining in, and really thanks a lot for all this interest. And although this is 12th or 13th webinar, and see that the maximum point or number of attendants was way above 50. So I'm really glad that our company is causing such an interest, and yeah, we're really glad to use this instrument and be able to communicate with you on this regular basis. So stay with us. We will certainly deliver you all the news that we have as they appear. And till the next time then, and thanks again for joining.
Thank you.